life. Yeah. Going live today with the infamous, he likes it when I say this, Jator from WE HLC and Explore with Jator. So, let's get Jator on here. Boom. Bam. So I'm stoked to have another conversation with Jator. Really appreciate his perspectives and his insights. So, there he is.
Infamous, man. I can't miss that, brother. I love it.
I mean, I only know one Jator, so for me, you are infamous.
What I love most about that is I've done many searches to find another Jator, and there's a rock group in Spain named Jator, and then I found this woman in the down south named Torre. And I hit her up on Messenger. I was like, "Yo, Torre." She never answered me back. So I was like, well, guess it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I guess so. So very platonic. How are you doing today?
Depends what part of me you're asking, brother.
Ooh, what answer wants to? What part do you want to answer? I've played this game before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
What part of me wants to answer? You know, here in Denmark, honestly, I feel like I'm on rails. Man, in all honesty, I'm just knocking it out the park. I don't really know what else to say.
Ooh, so these are good rails.
Yeah, you ever drive a car on train tracks?
No.
It's very smooth.
I'll have to try this sometime.
At least in the States, there's parts of train tracks that go flush with the road. They're not raised up, and you can just lay your car tires right on top. And the car, it's called driving on rails. It's just super smooth. So my experience here in Denmark, man, is of course there's challenges and all of that, and I just feel like things just are super smooth. So I guess what I'm saying is all my ego's needs are met here, and I'll be interested to when it happens that they're really challenged and and all of a sudden they're not being met anymore. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, as I had mentioned to you, I'm curious about your perspective on money. And specifically around fear with money. This last weekend, I went through a deep workshop called called Breathing into Life, a Tantric Energetics workshop, where we did bioenergetics and breath work. And after that workshop, I was processing. A lot was showing up with my stomach, like digestion, and there was this fear around money. So I was curious. Have you had any experience with money and money fear, or just around this whole perspective?
I've had no experience with money.
Thank you for the call, bro.
All right. Good luck, everyone.
No answers here today.
What I love about the question, one, it's a question, and I love questions. And two, I think when we jump on and we talk or we do podcasts or whatever's going on, like these are big questions. These are deep and wide. It's not. Let's just say a half an hour to an hour doesn't suffice at all. It's simply like scraping the surface. So,
right.
What I'd like to share, at least, is some considerations around money. And the first thing I always do, and I'm using that word quite purposefully, always, is I always ask myself this question first, which is, what does something represent to me? So if it's, we have money, the literal idea of money in my hand, cash, smell, etc., exchange. But what does money represent to you? is always the first question I ask myself. What does money represent to me? And that helps me get out of the literal expression. It helps me move into symbolism. And that moving into the realm of symbolism, at least for me, helps me to expand my consciousness and my awareness around, well, what does money mean to these aspects of self? Does money mean shame? Does money mean fear? Does money mean being seen, being too much, being too little? Does money mean if I have too much of it, I'm moving out of what my parents had, and I feel a sense of shame about being more than my parents? Does staying under what my parents have mean I'm being loyal to my perspective and attachment to being where I've always needed to be in the family, which is to be a child, to be taken care of? Does money mean, oh, I'm super spiritual, so if I have money, people aren't going to think I'm spiritual? I mean, as you start to expand into moving out of the literal realm around any topic, it's going to widen your ability to perceive what might be the underlying stories and what might be the roots of what's showing up in your life, or what's not showing up in your life. What is your association with what money represents? So if we notice that we have a fear around money, my first question would be, well, what does money represent to you? What are you really afraid of? Because money is simply the literal expression of it. If we can peel underneath all of that and start to dig into the soil of what money represents to you, and then get into, we have this literal story, then we have the metaphor or the symbolic story, so we can kind of peel it apart. And as we're doing that, we can explore all of that. And then we can move into the paradoxical realm. For me, what the paradoxical realm is asking questions like, well, I'm always lacking in what money represents to me. Cool. What is that? What part of me actually benefits from that story? And that's a paradox. People don't typically look at, when people, in my experience at least of coaching and also my experience with myself, people typically look at the grass is always greener, or when things negative are showing up in their life, oh, I don't want this in my life. I don't want to not have money. I don't want to have bad relationships. I don't want to have a broken leg. I don't want to have all this stuff, whatever it is, right? Pain, shame, fear. I don't want any of that. My perspective is BS. A part of you wants that in your life, and a part of you benefits from it. And can you find the paradox? Can you find how a part of you learned behaviors that are expression now of negative things showing up in your life? And how do you get your emotional needs met by that quote-unquote negativity? I'm doing negativity because I don't really think it's positive or negative. I'm just trying to give context to the conversation. And if you can find that root, man, that is a game changer, because you can start to get really clear on, how do I benefit from this negative experience or negative relationship I have with what money represents to me? And then you can start to get clear on, well, is that still serving me today? Is it still serving who I want to be? And what are the challenges of having lack in money? And what are the benefits of having lack in money? And then, what are the challenges of all of a sudden having tons of money? And what are the benefits of all of a sudden having tons of money? If you look at the research around money, people that win the lottery typically are broke within a year or two. They all of a sudden have a ton of money, but it has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with their relationship to what money represents to them and the underlying roots. And you talked about bioenergetics. For me, this is where parts of the bioenergetics come from. It's the energetic signature that you hold in your subconscious mind and your unconscious mind that is surrounding you all the time that most of us, including myself, are unaware of. So we have these conscious ideas. I want more money. Okay, great. Well, let's get into the subconscious, because in my experience, the subconscious is what's running the show. So we got to get in touch with what's in the shadow to start to see, okay, well, how is this stuff showing up and manifesting in our lives? And how do I benefit from it? How am I challenged from it? And do I want to change it? People don't look at the challenges of change. People typically don't look at that. It's a challenging place to be to change and have your whole environment change. Because I'll use myself as an example. I'm 41 years old. When things change in my life, there comes challenges with that change, even if they're things that I think I want to change. And it's fascinating to me that we create so much internal pain and criticism towards self when aspects of our lives are not going directly in alignment with the conscious agenda that we have. And so you start to listen to people's language, then you start to really hear what people are actually saying. So I don't typically spend a lot of time listening to people's literal words, because I know that that is a deflection. They're trying to sell me a story and trying to sell me a very rational perspective. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'm always listening for what's underneath their story. What aren't they saying? What does this represent to them? Where are they hiding from themselves? And I try to listen to myself in the same way. And it's why I still have a coach, because I know that I delude myself. I know that I have arrogant parts. I know that I have self-righteous parts. I know that I think I know it all at times. So I also need a checks and balance system around my own BS, which is why I have a coach to help me peel back layers around, if I'm struggling with money or I'm not. Well, what does money represent to me? Where does that come from? One of the most amazing ones that I found, for me at least, around my association with what money represents to me from my past. This was maybe 10 years ago. I was in a coaching session, and one of the things that I found through that coaching session that was holding me back from making more money was I had a deep-seated fear and a lot of shame around outshining my father. My dad has, multiple degrees and PhD and blah, 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 blah. Cool shit. And there was a little boy in me that felt afraid to be more than my dad. And also felt a sense of shame, fear, and guilt about making more than he did. And how was he going to feel? Because at some point in my life, most of us learn the story as children that it's our job to parent our parents. So in a sense, a part of me was parenting my dad by not outshining him to try to take care of his feelings, which really in actuality what I'm saying is parenting myself through the mechanism of parenting my dad and being less than him to always keep him up on a pedestal. Mm-hmm. So money's deep, man, just like everything else.
Excuse me, my alarm clock went off on my phone. Yeah, dude, money is really deep. That's interesting. When you were saying that, part of something that came up for me was this desire to be like my dad. Right? And my dad grew up with his dad having a lack of money and resources being tight. So I shared with him a story the other day of, it was yesterday. I'm out here and Austria. I'm enjoying the beautiful countryside. I get this amazing hamburger, and I'm paying with my credit card. And as I'm, a thought comes to my mind, which is, I hope it doesn't bounce. Like, I hope my card does get rejected. And I shared the story last night with my dad. He's like, oh, I wonder if some of this was inherited. Because he's like, I have 2 credit cards and a debit card, all of which are fine. I'll pay for dinner, and almost every time, the same thought comes up.
Well said, brother. It's fascinating to consider, and I think many of us, I think it's a little scary for many of us to consider this, is that if you were a plant, right, and you were planted, your family of origin is the soil in which you were planted. And you will always have roots there. Always. And many of us navigate our family in different ways. 2 different ways come up for me, either through compliant behavior or defiant behavior, to find a sense of connection with those roots. So as you're maybe, who knows, as you're noticing this, this thought that jumps in you, it might be the soil in which you grew that you still have roots in. And it's very scary for most of us to acknowledge the roots and the soil and allow ourselves to grow in a different direction. Because that feels like, to parts of our ego, as very separating from our original family, and it actually feels like a loss. It feels like a loss of connection. It's really a loss of attachment, at least in my opinion it is. And so for many of us, some of the real work, at least what I've found, is how do you learn to respect where you came from? Not through compliance or defiance. How do you learn to respect where you came from? And also not through approving or disapproving your parents' behavior. That is a wide frickin' question, my friend. Carl Jung talked about individuation. Osho talked about killing your parents. Basically saying the same things with very different words. How do we as human beings learn to humbly bow to the DNA and the history that we come from without the need of attaching and looking to approve or disapprove our parents? If we can find our way through that, you think about, I love sci-fi movies and stuff, and you think about Luke Skywalker is a great example. Luke Skywalker, for those movies, was in a tremendous amount of pain because Luke always wanted Darth to be different than Darth. He didn't want Darth Vader to be Darth Vader. He didn't want Darth Vader to be on the dark side or a Sith. He wanted Darth to be something different, which is Luke's needs. To parent his parent, Darth, and try to change him into who Luke needed him to be, not who Darth needed to be. So if we can find ways to understand and allow our parents to be who they are, not who we want them to be, it eventually helps us to free ourselves from the attachment and loyalty and fear to how we navigate life staying in connection with them. Whether you're through compliant behavior, being like my parents, or defiant behavior, oh, F my parents, you're still encompassed in the attachment. It's just the opposite polarity. You got compliance on one side and you got defiance on the other. You're still attached to the family through attachment, not connection. So money is one way that shows up. Our attachment to, like you said, being loyal, maybe in part subconsciously, to what your dad's relationship to money was. And then we start to look at money, right? What do we want? What's our conscious agenda around money? Questions I ask myself is, well, where's this Where is this coming from? Where is this desire to, say, have more money? What does that mean to me? Is it a part of me that wants to self-sabotage? Is it a part of me that wants to be more than others? Is it a part of me that wants to find peace and compassion? Is it a part of me that's loyal out of fear to my parents' relationship with money? And my experience is those questions start to really open up perspective. And a lot of people don't ask these questions, at least in my experiences, because it's fucking painful. Now, in this group that I'm running right now, Restore 60 with my good friend Ninka Mortson, the group is really diving into deep stuff. And I got a message today from one of the members, and it's about restoring, right? Restoring your mind, restoring your heart, restoring your body, restoring your gut, restoring your brain, restoring your relationship to money and your relationship to self. And she said, maybe this group shouldn't be called Restore. Maybe this group should be called Destruction and Distress. I loved it. I thought exactly. We have to destruct and destroy and open up and look at and unfold to move into really restoring, to move into really recreating. And that's not fun. You can look up, there's a guy in homeopathic medicine, Herring's Law. And basically, in that perspective, which I find really fascinating, the path into disease or dysfunction in any way, right? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, intuitive. The path into that, to get out of that, you have to reverse engineer. So what that means is, as you're going through a deep dive into your mental and emotional state and going through a healing process, let's just say it's about money, you're going to have to re-feel all that pain and shame and trauma and wounds. You're going to have to feel it. You're going to have to feel it to heal it, to move through it and into it, to come out the other side. What most of us do is just numb things out.